Gunnhild appears vividly in Norse sagas, yet the records closest to her lifetime barely allow her a voice. English annals name her husband Erik Bloodaxe, while Scandinavian narratives make his queen a tireless architect of dynastic power. That contrast does not prove Gunnhild was powerless, because royal women often disappear from contemporary political reporting. It does reveal how carefully her famous title, Mother of Kings, must be handled. The woman behind the sagas emerges along routes connecting Norway, York, Orkney, and Denmark. Each location preserves a different fragment, but no surviving source provides an impartial biography. Her historical importance rests partly on documented family politics and partly on stories written centuries afterward. Following those layers shows how medieval authors converted female influence into a compelling, dangerous character. Gunnhild probably lived during the first half of the 10th century, amid unstable experiments in Norwegian kingship. Later sources disagree even about her parentage, attaching different political meanings to her origins. The 12th century historian Norwegie calls her a daughter of Gorm, the Danish king. Icelandic traditions instead identify her father as Ösur Toti and place her youth far to the north. Heimskringla adds Finnish teachers of magic, an episode shaped like folklore rather than recoverable court history. These incompatible beginnings warn that writers were explaining Gunnhild's character, not simply recording her childhood. Making her Danish connected Erik's family to the prestigious house of Jelling. Giving her magical northern training created a literary source for cunning, prophecy, and feared female knowledge. Her marriage to Erik, son of Harald Fairhair, is more securely embedded within several independent traditions. Even here, the evidence identifies a royal partnership more clearly than its private terms. Erik's position in Norway was contested among brothers and regional power holders. Later narratives blame both spouses for eliminating rivals, but their detailed plotting belongs to retrospective storytelling. Whatever Gunnhild advised, succession disputes exposed households, retainers, and coastal communities to repeated political violence. Royal marriage joined property, ancestry, followers, and claims to future rule. A queen with several sons therefore possessed influence through kinship even without holding a formal office. Gunnhild's epithet points toward that mechanism because her sons became instruments of continuing dynastic ambition. Harald, later called Greycloak, stands at the center of the family's return to Norwegian power. Other sons named in saga traditions include Gamli, Guthorm, Erling, Gudrud, Sigurd, and Rangfred. Their collective identity mattered more to the narratives than any securely documented policy designed by their mother. Gunnhild's power was therefore relational, operating through access, loyalty, marriage, and claims carried by adult sons. Norway did not yet function as a stable hereditary monarchy with uncontested rules of succession. Assemblies, local magnates, armed followings, and Danish intervention all shaped who could rule. Within such conditions, a royal widow could preserve a faction by keeping sons together and alliances active. That plausible political role requires no invented poisonings, enchantments, or secret commands. Erik's expulsion from Norway moved the family story westward, although the sequence remains difficult to reconstruct. English evidence places a king called Erik at York during Northumbria's turbulent final years of Scandinavian rule. Coins bearing Erik's royal title provide material proof of kingship, but they do not name Gunnhild. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle records Erik's expulsion from Northumbria in 954 without describing his queen. Later sources connect his death with Stainmore, yet details surrounding that ending remain disputed. This silence leaves Gunnhild's presence in York possible and widely accepted, but not independently documented there. Saga authors filled the gap with movement, negotiation, and family purpose. Markets, mints, churches, workshops, and surrounding estates made its kingship economically valuable. If Gunnhild shared Erik's household there, her sons encountered Christian institutions and North Sea political networks. No source records how she responded to that environment or what religious practices she followed. After Erik's fall, later narratives send Gunnhild and her sons through Orkney toward Denmark. The route is credible because both places connected exiled elites with ships, protection, and potential allies. Yet its cinematic detail comes largely from works composed long after the crossings. Orkney saga tradition presents local rulers receiving the family, creating another stage for Gunnhild's strategic motherhood. Denmark offered the stronger political foundation through Harald Bluetooth and the expanding Jelling dynasty. Whether Gunnhild was Harald's sister, ally, or dependent changes across the source traditions. All versions agree on something structurally important. Her sons needed outside support to challenge Norway's rulers. Danish backing was never a sentimental rescue because intervention could extend influence over Norwegian coasts. The alliance placed Gunnhild's household inside a contest larger than one family's restoration. Around the middle of the 10th century, Erik's sons fought against Håkon the Good. Later sagas dramatize repeated campaigns before Håkon received a fatal wound at Fitjar. Contemporary skaldic poetry supports Håkon's warrior kingship and death, though not Gunnhild's supposed direction of events. Harald Greycloak then became the leading king among Erik's sons. Gunnhild consequently appears as the mother of rulers, not necessarily as a queen ruling openly herself. Norwegian kings depended upon gifts, landed resources, maritime force, and cooperation from regional leaders. Harald Greycloak's regime faced resistance from the powerful Jarls of Lade. Competition over tribute and coastal trade sharpened a conflict already rooted in rival claims. Counts also associate the period with pressure against pre-Christian cult practice, although conversion remained uneven. Attributing every policy to Gunnhild reduces a complicated regime to a single villainous intelligence. The label Mother of Kings may celebrate fertility and lineage while also concentrating blame. Royal sons gained legitimacy from ancestry, but their mother became a convenient explanation for coordinated ambition. Later Icelandic prose gives that explanation a memorable personality. Egil's saga places Gunnhild against the poet and fighter Egil Skallagrimsson in a sustained personal feud. The saga was written centuries after their supposed encounters and survives in later medieval manuscripts. Its episodes illuminate 13th century literary concerns, including honor, poetry, law, and the danger of royal hostility. They cannot serve as transcripts of 10th century conversations or private motives. Gunnhild's literary magic intensifies the conflict by making political enmity feel supernatural. Her sexuality is also weaponized, particularly in stories involving her son Rangfrod and the Icelander Hrut. Such motifs reflect male authors' anxieties about powerful women as much as biographical memory. Heimskringla, composed by Snorri Sturluson in 13th century Iceland, arranges her actions within a grand royal sequence. Snorri drew upon poetry, oral traditions, genealogies, and earlier prose, but shaped them into coherent narrative. Skaldic verses embedded in later works can preserve early material, though attribution and context still require scrutiny. Where poetry praises kings or battles, it rarely verifies the queen's alleged schemes. Where prose supplies intimate planning, the chronological distance becomes especially important. Gunnhild, thus, stands at the intersection of a plausible political role and a heavily authored reputation. Her son's collapse altered that reputation's setting once again. Harald Greycloak was killed after being drawn to Denmark, probably around 970. Håkon Sigurdsson then dominated much of Norway under the wider shadow of Danish royal power. Later accounts disperse Gunnhild's surviving sons and deprive their mother of her political network. Her own death becomes another field of incompatible stories rather than a documented final scene. One tradition has Harald Bluetooth order her drowned in a bog, a conclusion tailored to treachery and punishment. Other sources offer different endings, and none establishes the manner of her death securely. The Haraldskær Woman, found in a Danish bog in 1835, was once publicly identified as Gunnhild. Later scientific dating placed the body centuries before the Viking Age, decisively rejecting that romantic attribution. That mistaken identification shows how strongly Saga character could govern interpretation of physical remains. A preserved woman became a famous queen because audiences wanted the literary ending to possess a body. Removing that identification does not erase Gunnhild, it restores the difference between artifact and story. The earliest evidence leaves a royal wife, widow, and mother attached to a defeated but persistent dynasty. Political conditions make substantial influence likely, especially while her sons depended upon coordinated alliances. No contemporary record measures that influence or credits her with the specific decisions later authors describe. The sagas preserve cultural memory, but they also transform power into witchcraft, seduction, and maternal menace. Their Gunnhild helped explain why Erik's sons returned, ruled, fought, and ultimately failed. Historical Gunnhild is better understood through the opportunities available to an elite widow within mobile North Sea politics. Those opportunities included arranging support, maintaining household loyalty, protecting genealogical claims, and negotiating dependence. They did not make her omnipotent, and they cannot confirm the crimes assigned to her. Her title survives because motherhood itself could carry political force across exile and succession. From Norway to York and Denmark, Gunnhild's recoverable route ends before the sagas finish her story. Mother of Kings is therefore strongest as a description of dynastic position, not proof of every saga accusation.